In a world that thrives on reaction, staying unmoved is rebellion. Everyone wants your attention. Everyone wants your outrage. But the one who remains calm wins. This audiobook is not about doing more. It's about mastering less. Your reactions, your impulses, your noise. Because discipline is not about control over others. It's about control over yourself. And once you learn to stay unmoved, nothing and no one can move you again.
You can't control what happens, but you can control what you do next. That's the difference between people who stay steady and people who break. Reaction is instinct. Response is intelligence. Most people never make that shift. They move through life like a matchstick. One spark, one insult, one comment, and they ignite. They don't decide, they explode. But you're here because you're done exploding. You're ready to build control. You're ready to train your mind to pause before it burns everything down. Pause, breathe, respond. Don't react. Say it again in your head. Pause, breathe, respond. Don't react. That single pattern, repeated daily, rewires your emotional reflexes. It's not theory, it's training. And discipline, real discipline, starts in the half-second between trigger and choice. The reflex trap. Reactions are fast. They feel good. They feel right. Someone disrespects you, you snap. A deal falls through, you rage. A partner disappoints you, you retreat. It feels like power, but it's weakness disguised as expression. Every time you react, you hand your control to someone else. You let their behavior dictate your state, and that's emotional slavery. You have a choice, always. That's the key. When you pause, even for one deep breath, you reclaim the steering wheel. You stop being driven by impulse and start being guided by intention. That's the line between chaos and composure. The SEAL lesson. In Navy SEAL training, they teach a method called box breathing. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold. 4 seconds out, 4 seconds hold. Why? Because under fire, you can't afford panic. A racing heart leads to shaky hands. Shaky hands miss shots. A missed shot costs lives. So they trained their nervous system to stay calm under chaos. You can do the same. When your boss criticizes you, box breathe. When someone cuts you off in traffic, box breathe. When life throws another unfair hit, box breathe. Pause, breathe, respond, don't react. That's not weakness, that's control. That's strength at its highest level. Silent, centered, unemotional precision. Why reactions cost you everything. Look at your past mistakes. Almost all of them began with a reaction. A message you shouldn't have sent, a word you shouldn't have said, a decision you made too fast. Reactions feel good in the moment, but always carry regret. Responses feel slow in the moment, but always build respect. You don't need to prove that you're right. You don't need to prove that you're angry. You don't need their permission to stay calm. Calm isn't passive. Calm is power contained. It's the loaded weapon that only fires when it matters. How to train your response muscle. This isn't about emotionless living. It's about disciplined living. It's about learning to choose when to use your energy. So start small. Every morning, rehearse stillness. Sit in silence for 2 minutes. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. Observe thoughts. Don't chase them. Don't fight them. Just breathe. That's you learning to separate signal from noise. During conflict, insert a pause. Count to 3 before you speak. It feels unnatural, but that's the point. The pause breaks the chain between stimulus and habit. After emotional events, journal the gap. Ask, what triggered me? What story did I tell myself? What could I have done differently? Reflection builds awareness. Awareness builds control. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. If you used to explode 10 times a week and now you explode 9, that's a win. That's the process of rewiring. Because discipline is built in the small moments no one sees. Discipline is saying nothing when everything in you wants to shout. Discipline is walking away when your ego wants to win. You have a choice. Every time.
From emotion to strategy. The emotional person burns energy. The strategic person channels it. When you stop reacting, you start observing. When you start observing, you start understanding. And understanding gives you leverage. Imagine arguments as sparring matches. The one who loses control first loses position. The one who stays calm sees everything. That's how negotiators win deals. That's how leaders earn loyalty. That's how warriors survive battle. They stay unmoved long enough to see the real pattern beneath the noise. You can too. So the next time someone provokes you, don't match their tone. Lower yours. Don't mirror their chaos. Mirror your discipline. They'll think you're detached, but what you really are is in charge. The shift. Here's the mental shift you must make. Reacting is about them. Responding is about you. When you react, you mirror their emotion. When you respond, you project your standard. You are not their echo. You are your own command. That's the key. That's emotional leadership. That's how you stay unmoved in a moving world. The real world test. Tomorrow, you'll be tested. Someone will interrupt you. Someone will criticize you. Life will hand you a moment of friction. That's your training ground. Catch yourself before the reaction. Feel the surge. Pause. Anyway, hear yourself say it. Pause, breathe, respond, don't react. Then watch what happens. The world slows down. Your clarity rises. You become the calm one in the room. People will notice. They won't know why. They'll call it confidence, maturity, strength, but it's none of those things. It's discipline, quiet, invisible discipline. And that's what this book is about, the lesson. If you want peace, master pause. If you want power, master response. If you want freedom, master control. You can't control others. You can't control the world, but you can always control the next move. That's the power of being unmoved. That's the foundation of mental toughness. That's emotional control in motion. Pause, breathe, respond. Don't react. Repeat it until it becomes reflex. Because when the pause becomes natural, power becomes permanent. Transition. You've just taken your first step toward mastering your emotions. You've learned the strength of the pause, the calm inside the storm, the response that replaces the reaction.
Now you understand control begins within. But control doesn't live in silence alone. It's tested in the noise that surrounds you every day. You mastered your reactions. Now, let's talk about the true enemy of discipline: distraction.
The trap of noise. The modern world is loud. Loud with opinions, loud with arguments, loud with distraction. Every notification, every headline, every comment, it all demands your reaction. That's the trap. That's how the world steals your attention, your focus, your emotional control. You think you're choosing what to engage with, but you're not. You're being pulled, programmed, controlled by noise. You can't stay unmoved when you keep chasing movement. You can't build discipline when you keep feeding distraction. And that's the lesson. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is power. Silence is strength. Noise is surrender. Say it again. Silence is strength. Noise is surrender. The illusion of connection. You scroll because you want connection. You comment because you want validation. You post because you want to be seen. But connection has been replaced with performance. Validation has been replaced with addiction. And attention, your most valuable currency, is being sold to the highest bidder. Every moment you give to the noise is a moment stolen from your mission. Every scroll, every gossip session, every argument online, it's all emotional leakage. You are bleeding energy into the void. You have a choice. You can keep feeding the noise, or you can start building the silence. That's the key. The emotional tax of distraction. Noise doesn't just waste time, it weakens you. Every time you react to gossip, you reinforce insecurity. Every time you argue online, you validate your own need for approval. Every time you respond to negativity, you trade peace for chaos. Noise demands reaction. Silence requires control. That's why most people can't stop scrolling, because reacting feels alive. It feels like participation, but it's just emotional addiction disguised as engagement. You don't need to comment on everything. You don't need to prove you're right. You don't need their permission to stay quiet. The strongest person in the room is the one who speaks last, or not at all. Real-world control. The rule of 3 filters. Here's how you begin. Start practicing the rule of 3 filters. Before you speak, before you post, before you respond, ask 3 questions. Does this matter? Does this align with my mission? Will this add peace or noise? If the answer isn't clarity, alignment, or peace, you don't engage. You stay silent. That's emotional discipline in action. That's self-leadership disguised as stillness. That's how warriors, thinkers, and leaders preserve focus. Silence is strength. Noise is surrender. The myth of staying informed. We're told we need to stay updated. We confuse awareness with anxiety. We mistake consumption for intelligence.
You don't need to know everything that happens in the world. You need to master what happens inside your world. People check the news 10 times a day and can't check their own thoughts once. They track market trends, but not their emotions. They can tell you what others think, but not what they believe. That's the trap. You think knowledge equals power, but endless information is noise without focus. Silence gives you perspective. Perspective gives you control. Control gives you strength. That's the chain of power. That's the key.
The discipline of unsubscribing. If you want to reclaim your attention, you must declutter your mind. Unfollow negativity. Mute gossip. Silence the constant chatter. Your peace is worth more than your curiosity. You don't need to see everything. You don't need to respond to everyone. You don't need to be available 24/7. Discipline is saying no to noise, even when everyone else says yes. Delete one app. Silence one group chat. Ignore one argument. You'll feel the difference instantly. It's not about isolation. It's about elevation. It's not about missing out. It's about locking in. You can't hear your purpose when you're drowning in noise. You can't build clarity when you're surrounded by confusion. Silence is strength. Noise is surrender. Why quiet people win? Look at the people who move the world. Thinkers, builders, visionaries. They are not loud, they are focused. They are measured. The quiet person is not avoiding the world, they're studying it. They're listening, observing, preparing. While others shout, they plan. While others react, they position. While others argue, they act. Noise makes people visible. Silence makes people powerful. Don't confuse attention with authority. Don't confuse visibility with value. Don't confuse noise with progress. You have a choice to blend in with the noise or rise above it through silence. That's how you stay unmoved in a loud world. The practice of strategic silence. Here's a challenge. Go silent for 1 hour every day. No phone, no notifications, no background noise. At first, it'll feel strange, uncomfortable. That's withdrawal. That's addiction breaking. Stay with it. In that silence, your mind will start to settle. Your thoughts will clear. Your inner voice will get louder. Not the anxious one, the real one. The voice that knows your direction. The voice that's been buried under years of noise. That's the voice of discipline. That's the voice of peace. That's the voice of power. You can't find it in the crowd. You find it in quiet. Silence is where transformation begins. Noise is where it ends. Silence is strength. Noise is surrender. Cutting the noise in daily life. Let's make it real. When someone gossips, walk away. When drama unfolds, stay neutral. When negativity spreads, don't join in. You're not ignoring reality. You're protecting your energy. It's not about arrogance. It's about awareness. It's not about being cold. It's about being clear. The disciplined mind does not react to everything it sees.
It selects what deserves attention and rejects the rest. Remember, focus is a resource. Once it's gone, it's gone. Spend it wisely. You have a choice. Every minute you choose silence, you reclaim a piece of yourself. The power shift. Noise gives others control over you. Silence gives you control over yourself. That's why it feels uncomfortable to disconnect, because silence forces you to meet yourself. It exposes your thoughts, your insecurities, your truth. But that's the path. You can't grow louder until you've mastered quiet. You don't conquer noise by shouting louder. You conquer noise by standing still. That's the discipline to stay unmoved. That's the power the world can't touch. Silence is strength. Noise is surrender. Transition. You've learned to see noise for what it is, a trap disguised as connection. You've learned that silence isn't weakness, it's your weapon. Now you understand that control begins in quiet. But silence alone isn't enough, because emotions still rise. And when they do, discipline must rise higher. You mastered your environment. Now, it's time to master yourself.
Emotional discipline is emotional freedom. Your emotions are not the enemy. Your reactions are. You can feel everything: anger, sadness, jealousy, frustration, and still remain in control. That's the difference between the weak and the powerful. The weak let emotions lead. The powerful let emotions inform. This is emotional discipline, and emotional discipline is emotional freedom. Feel it. Don't feed it. Say it again. Feel it. Don't feed it. The myth of suppression. Let's get one thing straight. Emotional discipline doesn't mean emotional suppression. You're not a robot. You're not meant to be numb. It means you understand your emotions without becoming them. You observe them like weather. They rise, they shift, they fade. They're not permanent. They're not truth. They're not you. That's the key. The storm passes, but only if you stop building your house inside it. When you feed anger, it grows. When you feed fear, it spreads. When you feed pain, it multiplies. You don't control emotions by fighting them. You control emotions by refusing to give them power. You have a choice every single time to feel without feeding. Why emotional reactivity keeps you trapped. Most people never master emotional discipline because they're addicted to feeling powerful in their pain. They mistake emotional intensity for authenticity. They think shouting equals strength. They think crying equals honesty. But that's not strength, that's surrender. Every time you explode, every time you spiral, every time you break, you reinforce the belief that emotions control you. You give your peace away for free. That's the trap. That's why people stay miserable, because they confuse release with resolution. They think expressing pain heals it, but it only rehearses it. You don't need to express everything you feel, you need to direct it. That's what disciplined people do. They take emotion and turn it into motion. They take anger and turn it into work. They take pain and turn it into purpose. That's the transformation. That's the path to freedom. Feel it. Don't feed it. The observer mindset. Imagine this. You are sitting on a riverbank. The river is your mind. Emotions are the water flowing past, fast, sometimes violent, sometimes calm. Your job is not to control the water. Your job is to sit on the bank and watch it flow. You can't stop the water, but you can stop yourself from drowning in it. That's emotional discipline. That's how you stay unmoved when the current tries to pull you under. In real life, this means this. When anger rises, breathe, observe, don't act. When sadness hits, acknowledge, but don't sink. When anxiety whispers, listen, but don't obey. You are the watcher, not the waves. That's the key to emotional mastery. You don't fight your emotions, you outlast them. Real-world application, the 5-second emotional delay. Here's a tool you can use right now, the 5-second emotional delay. When a strong emotion hits, don't react for 5 seconds. Count. Breathe. Anchor yourself in the present. Because emotions are impulses. They come fast and fade faster when you don't feed them. In those 5 seconds, ask yourself, what triggered this? What story am I telling myself? Is this worth my peace? That single pause will change your life. It'll save you from saying words you regret, sending messages you can't take back, and making choices that break your progress. 5 seconds of silence can save you 5 years of regret. That's emotional discipline. That's emotional freedom. Feel it. Don't feed it. The cost of emotional indulgence. Let's talk about what happens when you don't practice control. Every time you let anger speak for you, you lose respect. Every time you let sadness stop you, you lose opportunity. Every time you let fear guide you, you lose growth. Emotional indulgence costs more than you think. It costs relationships. It costs trust. It costs momentum. You don't need to apologize for your feelings. You need to manage your response to them. Because emotions are natural, but reactions are chosen. You have a choice, always. That's the key. Stop saying, I can't help it. Start saying, I choose not to feed it. That's ownership. That's maturity. That's freedom. From chaos to clarity. When your emotions control you, your decisions come from chaos. When you control your emotions, your decisions come from clarity. That's the difference between impulsive and intentional, between temporary pleasure and long-term peace. Emotional discipline gives you space, space to think, space to choose, space to grow. That's why calm people win. They don't make emotional choices. They make strategic ones. They understand this simple truth. If you can master your emotions, you can master your life. Because emotional control is not passive, it's tactical. It's how you stay focused when others panic. It's how you win without noise. Freedom doesn't come from getting what you want. Freedom comes from mastering how you feel when you don't. That's emotional discipline. That's emotional freedom. Feel it. Don't feed it. You have learned how to master your inner weather, how to feel deeply without drowning, how to observe emotion without surrendering to it. Now you understand that power is not in reacting, it's in responding. But to master emotional control, you must also master your focus, what you give energy to and what you let go. You have taken command of your emotions. Now it's time to take command of your control.
Detach from what you can't control. Most of your stress doesn't come from life. It comes from resistance. You're not tired because life is hard. You're tired because you keep trying to control things that aren't yours to control. People, outcomes, timing. You're pulling the strings of a puppet that was never yours. And the harder you pull, the tighter the strings choke you. That's why peace feels far away, because you're chasing what was never meant to obey you. Here's the truth. You will never find peace trying to manage the uncontrollable. You find peace by mastering what is controllable. That's the key. That's detachment. That's freedom. Focus only on what's yours to master. The illusion of control. Let's destroy the illusion. You don't control outcomes. You control effort. You don't control timing. You control consistency. You don't control people. You control your standards. Everything beyond that is noise, distraction disguised as duty. You can't force someone to respect you. You can't make life fair. You can't rush what's meant to unfold. But you can choose how you respond, how you prepare, and how you show up. That's real control. That's power with precision. You don't need to manipulate the world. You just need to master yourself. That's the foundation of Stoic discipline. Control the controllable, release the rest. And no, that's not passivity. That's precision. You're not giving up, you're focusing up. Because when your energy is scattered on things you can't control, nothing grows. When your energy is focused on what you can control, everything changes. Focus only on what's yours to master. Why you hold on? You cling because you think control equals safety. But control isn't safety, it's stress. You believe that if you can just make everything perfect, you'll finally feel calm. But perfection is chaos disguised as order. You don't need control to feel calm. You need clarity.
Clarity about what belongs to you and what doesn't. You can't own someone's choices. You can't own the weather. You can't own time. You only own your focus, your effort, your discipline. Everything else is rented, temporary, unpredictable, uncontrollable. And the rent is too high when you keep trying to own what isn't yours. That's emotional bankruptcy. That's spiritual exhaustion. It ends when you decide, this isn't mine to fix. This isn't mine to fight. This isn't mine to fear. You free yourself when you let go, not because you don't care, but because you care correctly. Focus only on what's yours to master. The control equation. Here's the simple equation for freedom. Effort equals control. Outcome does not equal control. You control input, not output. You control behavior, not results. That's the formula that separates calm achievers from chaotic overthinkers. Most people live backward, obsessed with results, neglecting the process. They want outcomes without ownership. They want certainty without consistency. But the process is the path. The process is control. So focus on what you can actually command. Your habits, your focus, your reactions. That's your domain. That's your arena. Everything else is weather. And remember what we learned before. You don't fight the weather. You adapt to it. You can't make the wind stop blowing, but you can adjust your sails. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Focus only on what's yours to master. Real-world practice. The two lists exercise. Here's a simple tool. When your mind spirals, when you feel overwhelmed, stop. Take a blank page. Draw a line down the middle. On the left, write, things I can control. On the right, write, things I can't. Be ruthless. On the left, my response, my effort, my preparation, my standards, my words. On the right, other people's opinions, the past, the future, timing, luck. Now look at it. That's your reality map. And here's what you do next. Burn the right side, mentally or literally, because that's where your anxiety lives. That's where your peace goes to die. Then double down on the left side. That's where your power lives. That's where your growth begins. Focus only on what's yours to master.
The discipline of emotional distance. Emotional distance is not coldness, it's control. You can love people deeply and still not let their chaos infect your calm. You can care about outcomes and still not let them dictate your peace. Detachment is not indifference, it's intelligence. You're no longer emotionally enslaved to circumstances. You're no longer reactive to every noise in the world. That's the power of discipline. You stop being a puppet. You become the puppeteer. You start responding instead of reacting. You start leading instead of chasing. Because every time you detach from what you can't control,
You reclaim energy for what you can. And that energy builds momentum. That's how winners live. Focused, grounded, unbothered. They don't chase control. They choose it within themselves. Focus only on what's yours to master. The weight of surrender. Letting go is heavy at first. You'll feel like you're giving up. You'll feel like you're losing something. But you're not losing control. You're losing illusion. You're not surrendering power. You're reclaiming it. Because every minute you waste on things beyond your reach steals a minute from what you could have changed. That's the hidden cost of obsession. It drains the life you actually have. So stop arguing with reality. Reality doesn't negotiate. Stop trying to fix situations that aren't broken, just uncomfortable. Your peace is worth more than your pride. Release the grip. Let the uncontrollable go, and what remains will be everything you ever needed. Focus, energy, clarity, freedom. That's the reward of detachment. That's the discipline of control. Focus only on what's yours to master. Freedom through precision. The most powerful people in the world live by this law. Energy is currency. Spend it only where it compounds. They don't get lost in gossip. They don't get stuck in what-ifs. They don't try to force timing. They wake up, identify what's in their control, and execute. That's precision. That's freedom. Because control isn't about domination. It's about direction. You don't need to hold everything. You just need to hold your line. Focus only on what's yours to master. Your habits, your emotions, your standards, your execution. Everything else will fall into place or fall away. And that's the beauty of it. You stop fighting the world. You start flowing with it. That's how calm becomes strength. That's how peace becomes power. Transition. You've learned the art of detachment, how to stop bleeding energy into things that were never yours to fix. You've learned that control is not about domination, it's about direction. You've learned to focus your energy where it matters. Now that you've mastered control, there's another power waiting. The discipline of silence. Because silence is not emptiness, it's strategy. You've learned to focus. Next, you'll learn to speak less and move more.
The power of emotional delay. You ruin most things not because you act, but because you act too fast. Every argument that spiraled, every regret that followed anger, every word you wish you could take back. It all happened because you reacted instantly. That's the trap. That's emotional impulsivity, your greatest enemy. You didn't think. You didn't breathe. You just fired. And every time you do that, you give your power away. The world provokes you. Someone pushes your buttons, and you deliver your peace like a gift to people who never earned it. You need to learn the art of emotional delay. Every second you delay a reaction, you reclaim authority over your mind. That's the law. That's the power. That's emotional control. Wait before you act. Delay before you decide. The space between stimulus and response. There's a space between stimulus and response. It's invisible, but it decides your entire life. In that space, you either act like a master or a slave. A slave reacts. A master waits. A slave fires off texts, yells, storms out, proves a point. A master breathes, pauses, and observes. That's not weakness, that's command. Because the pause isn't passive, it's strategic. The pause is where composure lives. The pause is where wisdom speaks. The pause is where emotion turns into clarity. That's where you win. Because people who can't delay their emotions lose everything: peace, respect, trust, focus. They trade it all for a few seconds of reaction. But people who can delay, they control the board. They lead the room. They own the moment. That's what great leaders do. They delay. They think. They decide. Wait before you act. Delay before you decide. Why you react too fast. You react too fast because your ego can't stand still. It needs validation. It needs to prove. It needs to be right now. But urgency is emotional weakness pretending to be confidence. You're not responding from strength. You're defending from fear. Fear of being disrespected. Fear of being ignored. Fear of being seen as less. But here's the truth. No one who's actually in control ever rushes. Control and hurry don't coexist. When you move fast emotionally, you're not leading, you're leaking. That's the difference. It's not about reacting first, it's about reacting right. And reacting right takes patience, it takes breath, it takes composure under pressure. That's emotional delay. That's mastery. Wait before you act. Delay before you decide. The science of the pause. Here's the psychology. When you're triggered, your amygdala, the brain's fear center, takes over. It floods your system with emotion before logic has time to load. That's why you say things you don't mean. That's why you act out. That's why you regret it later. But the prefrontal cortex, your rational brain, needs time to engage. And that time is your weapon. You can literally rewire your emotional reflexes by creating a gap between trigger and action. That gap is training. That gap is growth. The Navy SEALs use it in combat. They call it tactical breathing. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. Because control under chaos is not luck, it's discipline. If they can do it under gunfire, you can do it in an argument. Pause, breathe, respond. Don't react. You don't need to match their speed. You need to master your stillness. Wait before you act. Delay before you decide.
Real-world practice, the 3-second rule. Here's the simplest training you'll ever do, and the hardest to master. Every time you feel triggered by a comment, a post, a person, wait 3 seconds. Don't type. Don't speak. Don't move. Just wait. 3 seconds may not sound like much, but it's everything. Because those 3 seconds are your decision window. That's where the transformation happens, between emotion and action. You'll feel the urge rise, the need to respond, to defend, to strike back. But if you can hold it, even for 3 seconds, you begin to break the habit of impulsivity. And that's all emotional mastery is, breaking the habit of losing control. You have to train it daily. Train it in traffic. Train it in arguments. Train it in silence. Every pause you take is a rep. Every delay is a muscle built. You're not weak for waiting. You're weaponizing your patience. Because silence is not surrender. Delay is not defeat. It's precision. Wait before you act. Delay before you decide. From emotional delay to emotional authority. Let's be clear, delaying isn't about suppressing. It's about channeling. You're not ignoring emotion. You're giving it direction. You feel it, but you don't feed it. You let the storm pass before you move. You don't text in anger. You don't decide in confusion. You don't promise in excitement. You wait. You watch. You weigh. And then you move with precision, not emotion. That's how emotional delay turns into emotional authority. You stop reacting to the world and start directing it. People will notice it. They'll feel your calm. They'll sense your weight. Because calm has gravity. When you're steady, people orbit around you. You don't demand respect. You command it through control. Wait before you act. Delay before you decide. The discipline to wait. Waiting is hard because the ego hates patience. It wants to fix now, prove now, be right now. But the disciplined person plays the long game. They don't need to win the minute. They win the moment that matters. You can't lead your life if you're led by emotion. You can't grow if you're governed by reaction. Patience is not passive. It's power in slow motion. Every delay sharpens judgment. Every pause strengthens control. Every wait builds wisdom. The world reacts. You don't. You observe, you assess, then you act when it counts. That's what separates the disciplined from the distracted. That's what makes you unshakable. Wait before you act. Delay before you decide. Transition. You've learned to slow your reactions, to delay your emotions, to reclaim your mind. You've learned that waiting isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You've learned that calm is the sharpest weapon in chaos. Now it's time to build on that strength. You've learned to delay reaction. Next, you'll learn to redirect energy. Because stillness is only step one. What you do with that energy after you wait, that's the real test. You've built patience. Now it's time for focus.
Stop proving and start building. You waste your strength trying to prove your worth. You waste your focus trying to convince people who never cared. That's why you're tired. That's why you're drained. Because every time you chase validation, you trade your peace for approval. Validation seeking is emotional debt. The more you seek it, the weaker you become. The more you try to prove, the less you actually produce. You don't need their permission to grow. You don't need their applause to win. You don't even need their understanding to build your life. Because the truth is simple. The loudest workers rarely build anything that lasts. The quiet ones do. Build in silence. Let results prove your point. The trap of validation. Let's explode the trap. Validation feels good for a moment. Someone compliments you. Someone notices your progress. You feel seen. You feel alive. But here's the problem. Validation is a drug. You start needing it. You start chasing it. And the more you get, the more empty you feel. Why? Because external approval doesn't build internal confidence. It replaces it. You're outsourcing your identity to opinions. You're renting self-worth from strangers. That's not power. That's weakness. And dependence is weakness, no matter how motivated it looks. The more you crave validation, the more control you give away. You start performing for applause instead of progress. You start living to be seen instead of becoming strong. And when the applause fades, so does your purpose. That's the cost. That's the consequence. You build nothing real when you build for attention. Build in silence. Let results prove your point. The currency of quiet work. Real strength is built quietly. The world doesn't see you at 5 a.m. The world doesn't see you saying no to distraction. The world doesn't see you fighting your own mind when no one's watching. That's the real work. That's where transformation happens. Not in the spotlight, in solitude. Because quiet work compounds. The small habits, the daily consistency, the unseen repetitions. That's how confidence is built, brick by brick, day by day, in silence. Loud effort fades, quiet effort compounds. You have to decide what you want, attention or growth, because you can't chase both. One feeds the ego, the other builds the foundation. It's not about being seen. It's about becoming solid. Build in silence. Let results prove your point. Why you seek to prove? You seek to prove because you're still wounded. Somewhere inside, you still need someone to notice you. You want them to see that you're enough now. You want them to admit they were wrong about you. That's the emotional wound talking, not your discipline. But listen closely. You don't heal by proving. You heal by producing. You don't fix pain by performing. You fix it by progressing. When you try to prove your worth, you're still letting your pain lead the way. And pain makes terrible leadership. You can't move forward while looking back for applause. You can't build the future while seeking approval from the past. The people you're trying to impress, they've already moved on. And the only one left waiting for proof is you. Stop proving. Start building. Build in silence. Let results prove your point. The builder's mindset. Builders think differently. They don't announce what they're doing, they execute. They don't argue about plans, they build them. They don't beg for trust, they earn it through consistency. They move like ghosts, they speak only through outcomes. That's the builder's mindset. Because results speak louder than explanations, and silence creates mystery, which creates respect.
The most powerful people you'll ever meet rarely explain themselves. They don't tell you what they're building. They just appear one day, and it's done. That's the model. That's the standard. Talk is cheap, execution is expensive, and most people can't afford it. That's why you'll stand out when you stop talking and start doing.
The cost of noise. Noise steals time. Noise steals focus. Noise steals dignity. The more you talk about what you're going to do, the less energy you have left to actually do it. Because words release dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. And when you tell everyone your goals, you feel like you've already achieved something. That's the trap. You got the high without the work. You got the feeling of progress without the discipline of progress. That's why silent builders win. They delay the dopamine. They delay the recognition. They delay the reward. They don't announce the process. They respect it. When you delay recognition, you grow resilience. When you delay applause, you build authenticity. When you delay validation, you create real confidence. Silence isn't absence, it's alignment. Build in silence. Let results prove your point. Real-world practice, the rule of secrecy. Here's how you train it. Pick one goal, something you're working on. Now, tell no one. Not your friends, not social media, not your family. Just you, your effort, your results. Keep it private. Build it in silence. You'll feel the urge to tell someone. Resist it. You'll crave a little validation. Reject it. Because that craving is your ego begging for comfort. And your job is to deny it. Every time you keep quiet, you strengthen the muscle of restraint. And restraint is the foundation of control. When you finally reveal your results, they'll speak louder than any announcement ever could. People won't ask what you're doing. They'll ask how you did it. That's the difference between noise and proof. Build in silence. Let results prove your point. When you stop proving, you start growing. When you stop needing validation, you finally grow with freedom. Because growth built on applause collapses when the audience disappears. But growth built on discipline stands forever. You don't build for them, you build for yourself. You don't build for the world's attention, you build for your own evolution. The work itself becomes the reward. The silence becomes sacred. You realize you don't need eyes watching. You need hands working. You don't need permission. You need purpose. You don't need applause. You need accuracy. And once you taste that, you'll never chase validation again. Build in silence. Let results prove your point. The discipline of non-reaction. Understand this, building in silence isn't just about work. It's about emotional control. When someone doubts you, stay quiet. When someone mocks your pace, stay quiet. When someone doesn't believe, stay quiet. Because silence is a mirror. It reflects their noise back at them. You don't argue with fools. You don't debate with doubters. You don't explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You keep building. You keep creating. You keep proving through progress, not persuasion. That's mastery. That's maturity. That's discipline. Build in silence. Let results prove your point. Transition. You've learned that the need to prove is the enemy of progress.
You've learned that silence builds power. You've learned that validation is a trap disguised as motivation. Now, it's time to elevate your discipline even further. Because real strength isn't just about what you do, it's about what you sustain. You've learned to build quietly. Next, you'll learn to endure patiently. Because consistency is the ultimate form of control.
Master the art of emotional minimalism. You lose power every time you overreact. You lose focus every time you overfeel. You think passion is strength. You think emotion shows that you care. But the truth is, unchecked emotion is energy leakage. Overreacting drains energy. Minimal emotional investment keeps power centralized. That's the law. That's emotional minimalism. Use less emotion. Gain more power. The power of restraint. Emotional minimalism doesn't mean coldness. It means control. It means channeling energy with precision. Because the strongest people aren't the loudest. They're the calm ones. They're the ones who speak less and do more. The more emotion you spend, the less power you hold. Every outburst, every rant, every panic costs you mental capital. You can't afford that. Emotion is currency. You either invest it or waste it. Most people waste it. They overthink, overreact, over-explain. They get upset at what doesn't matter. They give energy to what doesn't deserve it. That's emotional poverty. You must learn the art of restraint, to use emotions strategically, not impulsively. Because in the end, calm isn't weakness. Calm is command. Use less emotion. Gain more power. Overreaction is weakness. Let's be honest, overreaction is weakness disguised as passion. When you react instantly, you're not deciding, you're being driven. Driven by emotion, driven by impulse, driven by ego. You think you're being real, but in truth, you're being controlled. Because the one who can trigger you owns you. When someone pushes your buttons and you explode, they just proved how easily you can be moved. That's not strength. That's slavery. Every time you overreact, you're saying, "Here, take my peace, take my focus, take my time." You're handing over your control. You can't build discipline while losing control to emotion. You can't master your life while being mastered by impulses. That's why emotional minimalism matters. It's not about being less human. It's about being less reactive. You have a choice. You always have a choice. Pause before reacting. Process before expressing. Choose before responding. That's how you reclaim your power. Use less emotion. Gain more power. How to practice emotional minimalism. Here's the formula. It's simple, but not easy. Step 1. Observe. Don't absorb. You don't have to react to everything you notice. You don't have to feel everything you see. When chaos enters your space, step back mentally. Watch it. Label it. Let it pass. You're not the chaos. You're the observer of it. Step 2. Speak less, mean more. Every time you speak emotionally, you weaken your position. Reserve your words. Say less. Let silence do the talking. Because silence unnerves the undisciplined. Step 3. Delay emotion. This is key. When something triggers you, wait. Don't act. Don't respond. Don't decide.
Delay your emotion like a sniper waiting for the perfect shot, because power lives in delay. Step 4. Redirect the energy. Every emotional surge is energy. If you can redirect it into work, training, focus, you convert weakness into strength. That's alchemy. Step 5. Evaluate after, not during. Emotion clouds judgment. Logic clears it. Never evaluate while triggered. Always assess after you've cooled. That's how disciplined minds operate. Use less emotion, gain more power. Minimalism is precision. Minimalism isn't emptiness, it's efficiency. It's cutting away what's not necessary so what remains becomes unstoppable. The same applies emotionally. You don't need to care about everything. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to feel deeply about every headline, every comment, every slight. Choose your battles. Protect your bandwidth. Preserve your intensity. Because intensity without direction is destruction, and emotion without discipline is chaos. Minimalism is the art of keeping your emotional weapon sharp by not using it on every fight. That's the secret to endurance. That's the secret to calm strength. Use less emotion, gain more power. The psychology of stillness. Understand this. Stillness is not the absence of emotion. It's the dominance of emotion. When you feel anger and stay calm, that's strength. When you feel fear and still move, that's power. When you feel doubt and still act, that's control. That's emotional minimalism in action. You're not suppressing, you're mastering. You're not pretending, you're prioritizing. Because not every emotion deserves expression. Some just need discipline. And when you practice that discipline, your mind starts to obey you. Your emotions start to serve you. Your reactions start to align with your purpose. You become untouchable. Use less emotion, gain more power. Real-world applications. Try this today. When someone says something irritating, don't respond. Just breathe. Count to 5. Stay still. Let silence speak. You'll notice something. They'll get uncomfortable because silence exposes their chaos. Next time you're stressed, lower your tone instead of raising it. Slow your breathing instead of your progress. Calm is contagious. Calm is control. And the next time you feel the need to prove, argue, or defend, don't. Let your results do the talking. That's emotional minimalism in practice. You're not suppressing, you're saving. You're saving energy for the real war, the one inside you. Use less emotion, gain more power. You have a choice. Every day you face moments that demand emotion. Someone cuts you off. Someone insults you. Someone doubts you. You have a choice: to overreact or to oversee, to explode or to endure, to feel everything or to focus on what matters. Emotion is a tool, not a master.
It serves you when you control it. It destroys you when you don't. You don't need to feel less. You need to direct better. That's the key. That's emotional minimalism. Use less emotion, gain more power. Transition. You've now mastered the art of emotional minimalism, the ability to feel deeply but act calmly. You've learned to preserve energy, protect power, and use emotion strategically. But power unchanneled is wasted, and control without focus is fragile. So, now it's time to talk about direction, the ability to aim all that emotional energy toward your highest purpose. You've learned to master your emotions. Next, you'll learn to master your aim.
The strength of stillness. Stillness is not weakness. Stillness is not passivity. Stillness is controlled energy, coiled and ready. Stillness is power, contained. It's awareness, sharpened into a weapon. It's the lion before the hunt, silent, observant, dangerous. You think strength is motion. You think doing more means becoming more. But true power moves last. True power watches, waits, and strikes with precision. That's the strength of stillness. That's the kind of strength that wins wars, both internal and external. Be still. Be aware. Be ready. The misunderstanding of stillness. Most people confuse stillness with doing nothing. They think being still means you've stopped growing. They think silence means you're lost. But stillness is not stagnation. It's strategy. When you're still, you're not idle. You're observing. You're not disengaged. You're waiting. Stillness is the moment before the move. It's the pause before precision. It's control disguised as calm. In a world addicted to noise, movement, and constant reaction, stillness is rebellion. Everyone else is rushing. Everyone else is panicking. Everyone else is trying to prove something. You don't need to. You've mastered the pause. You've mastered the calm. Be still. Be aware. Be ready. The lion before the hunt. Picture the lion before the hunt. It's not pacing. It's not roaring. It's still. Muscles tense but controlled. Eyes locked but calm. It studies everything: the terrain, the wind, the target. It wastes no motion. It conserves every ounce of energy. Because when the moment comes, it explodes. Every ounce of stored stillness becomes pure force. That's how mastery works. That's how power functions. Controlled stillness creates devastating precision. Now imagine your own life that way. Instead of chasing every distraction, every argument, every reaction, you learn to hold. You learn to breathe. You learn to wait. That's how you reclaim dominance over your emotions, your energy, and your outcomes. Stillness doesn't mean you stopped fighting. It means you stopped fighting blindly.
It means you're choosing when to strike, not reacting to everything that moves. That's strength. That's the strength of stillness. Be still. Be aware. Be ready. The modern problem. Motion addiction. We live in an age of constant motion, constant scrolling, constant reacting, constant comparison. People can't sit still anymore because stillness exposes them. Stillness shows them what's really going on inside, so they keep running. But running isn't progress if you're going in circles. Talking isn't action if it lacks direction. Moving isn't growth if it's without intention. Motion without awareness is chaos. Stillness with awareness is power. When you practice stillness, you regain sight of the battlefield. You see where your energy is leaking. You see who drains you and what distracts you. You begin to see yourself clearly. And once you can see clearly, you can act correctly. You have a choice: to live on reaction or to lead with reflection. That's the key. Be still. Be aware. Be ready. Stillness as a discipline. Stillness must be trained, like a muscle. It doesn't come naturally in a noisy world. You must build it deliberately. Start small. When your phone buzzes, don't check it immediately. When someone provokes you, don't respond right away. When you feel anxious, sit with it instead of escaping it. That's how stillness grows, through deliberate non-reaction. It's not about suppression. It's about mastery. You're not ignoring your impulses. You're instructing them. You're teaching your nervous system to obey your mind, not your environment. Stillness builds command. Command builds confidence. Confidence builds peace. Because when you stop moving frantically, you start moving intentionally. And intentional movement is unstoppable. Be still. Be aware. Be ready.
The tactical advantage of stillness. In combat, in business, in life, the one who moves less, observes more, and waits longer often wins. Because while others act emotionally, you act intelligently. While others rush, you read the field. While others guess, you know. Stillness gives you that edge. It's situational awareness in its purest form. Great leaders don't react to pressure. They absorb it. They breathe it in. They analyze before they act. Because movement is easy. Patience is power. You don't need to respond to everything. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You only need to remain composed, clear, and ready. Be still. Be aware. Be ready. Stillness and strength are one. True strength isn't shown in how much you can lift. It's shown in how little can move you. When everything around you is chaos and you remain unmoved, that's strength. When people try to provoke you and you choose silence, that's control. When the world screams for your attention and you stay focused, that's power. Stillness doesn't mean absence of energy.
It means total ownership of it. You can be still and full of fire. You can be calm and full of confidence. You can be silent and still command the room. Stillness doesn't take your power away. It multiplies it. Because stillness forces others to reveal themselves while you conserve yourself. That's the advantage of self-control. Be still. Be aware. Be ready. The internal battle. The hardest stillness to master isn't external, it's internal. It's the stillness of thought. Your mind races, your fears scream, your insecurities echo. You want to act, to fix, to prove, to speak. But you must learn to quiet that internal noise. You must learn to watch your thoughts without obeying them. Stillness of the mind is the foundation of all mental toughness. It's the discipline of detachment, of not being swayed by every emotion that passes through you. You have a choice every time a thought arises, to react or to remain rooted. And the more you choose stillness, the less control your mind has over you. That's freedom. Be still. Be aware. Be ready. Practicing stillness daily. Here's your daily training. Morning. Sit in silence for 5 minutes. No phone, no noise. Just breathe and observe. During the day, when someone irritates you, pause before reacting. Evening. Reflect on one moment where stillness could have changed your outcome. Then practice it next time. That's how stillness becomes strength. Through repetition, through awareness, through deliberate control. Every pause builds power. Every breath builds balance. Every quiet moment builds clarity. You are not training your body. You're training your energy. You're becoming the lion before the hunt, silent, focused, deadly in intent. Be still. Be aware. Be ready. You have a choice. You can live in noise, or you can live in awareness. You can keep moving blindly, or you can start observing clearly. You can keep reacting, or you can start mastering. Stillness is your secret weapon. Stillness is your advantage. Stillness is your freedom. The world wants you loud. The world wants you frantic. The world wants you distracted. Stay still. Stay grounded. Stay dangerous. That's the discipline. That's the strength. Be still. Be aware. Be ready. Transition. You've mastered the art of stillness, not the stillness of inaction, but the stillness of command. You've learned to control your energy before releasing it, to pause before reacting, to wait before striking. But stillness alone is not enough. Power must eventually move. Energy must eventually flow. Next, we'll talk about the movement of purpose, the ability to channel your controlled strength towards your mission. You've learned how to stay unmoved. Now it's time to learn how to move with intent.
Life will test you every single day. It won't warn you. It won't announce the exam. It will hit you, sometimes with rejection, sometimes with loss, sometimes with the silence of people you thought cared. And in that moment, you'll have a choice: to flinch or to hold. That's the battlefield most people never see, not outside, but inside. The world tests your emotional strength by creating chaos, by pulling your emotions out of you, by seeing how quickly you lose your center. But here's the truth. Chaos doesn't destroy the strong. It reveals them. That's the key. When the storm hits, emotional control becomes your weapon. Not your words, not your arguments, not your reactions. Just control. Because when you flinch, you lose. When you fold, you tell the world your emotions are stronger than your mind. And when you fall, not because of force, but because of fear, you hand over your power. Don't do that. Don't flinch. Don't fold. Don't fall. Think about the strongest people you know, the ones who never seem shaken. They still feel fear, they still feel doubt, they still feel pain, but they've trained their emotions to obey. They've mastered the art of being unmoved. The unmoved person isn't cold, they're clear. They don't need to react to every insult. They don't need to respond to every accusation. Because they understand that reactions cost energy, and energy is power. You can't afford to waste it on things that don't build you. You can't afford to hand it to people who want to see you lose composure. The world is watching. Every time you overreact, you teach people where your buttons are. You show them how to control you. Every time you stay calm, you teach them they can't touch you. That's the difference between emotional slavery and emotional mastery. And yes, it's a skill. You build it, you sharpen it, you earn it. It's not about being born with toughness. It's about training toughness. You have to practice not reacting. You have to practice sitting with discomfort. You have to practice silence when your ego screams for defense. Because the test isn't about the situation. It's about your control. Let's be clear. Emotional control doesn't mean emotional suppression. It means emotional discipline. It's the difference between a wild horse and a trained one. Both are powerful, but only one can be ridden into battle. Your emotions are not your enemy. They're your engine. But an uncontrolled engine burns itself out. So when life tests you, when people provoke, when setbacks arrive, breathe. Pause. Ask yourself, what am I about to lose if I react? Most times, the answer is peace. That's the key. Peace is the ultimate power, not control over others, but control over yourself. Because when you stay unmoved in chaos, you gain a kind of quiet authority. People notice it. They respect it. They might even fear it. Why? Because nothing threatens weak people more than someone they can't emotionally disturb. You will face criticism. You will face betrayal. You will face failure. But none of that defines you unless you react to it. If someone disrespects you, silence can be the loudest response. If someone doubts you, results can be the strongest argument. If the world underestimates you, time will correct them. If you keep moving. Don't defend your greatness. Build it. Don't explain your worth. Prove it. Don't react to noise. Focus on movement. Every emotional test is a chance to reinforce your armor. That's how the strong stay strong. They don't crumble under pressure. They get clearer.
They don't seek comfort, they seek control. Because the more you master your emotions, the more unpredictable you become to the world. And unpredictability is power. When they can't read you, they can't manipulate you. When they can't provoke you, they can't dominate you. When they can't shake you, they start respecting you. Not because you're loud, but because you're still.
The next time life tests you, stop. Stop before you fire off that angry message. Stop before you argue your value to someone too blind to see it. Stop before you explain yourself to people who don't even want to understand. Remember, you have a choice. The choice to rise above. The choice to stay centered. The choice to be the observer, not the reactor. That's how mental toughness is built, in the pause between emotion and action. In that space, you decide who you are. Will you be reactive or will you be relentless? Will you flinch or will you focus? The choice defines your rank in this world. Because the ones who don't flinch, they rise. They're trusted in crisis, respected in silence, followed in storms. They become leaders, not because they talk, but because they hold. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be composed. Every time you stay calm under pressure, you gain ground. Every time you don't take the bait, you strengthen your foundation. Every time you hold your peace instead of fighting for approval, you evolve. That's growth. That's power. That's emotional mastery. And it begins with one simple rule. Don't flinch. Don't fold. Don't fall. The world will test you again and again. But remember, every test is a chance to train. Every trial is a chance to prove to yourself that you can stand tall. When the world shakes, stand still. When the noise grows, go quiet. When everything feels uncertain, anchor deeper. Be the person who holds their form, because strength isn't proven in calm seas, it's revealed in storms. You can't control what happens, but you can control how you hold yourself through it. That's the discipline. That's the difference. You passed one test. Control. Now it's time to face the next. Because emotional mastery isn't only about stillness. It's also about patience. Patience to play the long game. Patience to build without applause. Patience to win in silence. You've learned how not to flinch. Now, it's time to learn how to endure.
There comes a point in life where chaos stops impressing you, where drama stops exciting you, where emotion stops leading you. That's the point where you begin to live unmoved. Living unmoved isn't about apathy. It's not about indifference. It's about discipline. It's about control. It's about being so centered that no external storm can pull you out of alignment. You've spent years reacting to people, to pressure, to pain. And for what? Every reaction drained you. Every outburst cost you. Every emotional slip made you weaker. But there's another way, a higher way. You can live unmoved. You can choose clarity over chaos, purpose over impulse, discipline
over drama. That's the choice of power. That's the path of mastery. And the truth is, not many walk it, because it's easier to react. It's easier to complain. It's easier to fall into emotional patterns that make you feel alive, even while they destroy you. But that's not strength. That's addiction to emotion, to approval, to noise. The unmoved person, they don't chase that. They create their own calm. They build their own balance. They live in quiet authority. Remain calm, remain clear, remain you. That's the mantra of the unmoved life. When you live unmoved, you stop seeking to control the world and start mastering yourself. That's the key. You can't control people. You can't control their words. You can't control their chaos. But you can control what enters your mind. You can control what leaves your mouth. You can control how long you dwell on things that don't serve you. That's emotional leadership. When you stop reacting, you stop giving away energy. When you stop explaining, you stop giving away authority. When you stop trying to prove, you stop giving away peace. That's what the unmoved life does. It reclaims what the reactive life keeps losing. Power, peace, presence. Those are your three currencies now. Guard them like treasure. Let's be honest. Living unmoved takes work. It means sitting in silence when you want to argue. It means walking away when your ego wants to win. It means responding with patience when your emotions want revenge. That's the discipline. You don't get peace for free. You earn it by restraint. When you hold your composure in chaos, you're not weak. You're weaponized. You're not cold. You're controlled. And that's what confuses people. They'll call you emotionless. They'll call you distant. They'll call you detached. But what they're really saying is, you don't give me control over you anymore. And that's exactly the point. You don't need their permission to be at peace. You don't need their validation to stay centered. You don't need their agreement to keep walking your path. It's not about being liked. It's about being stable. It's not about pleasing them. It's about protecting you. It's not about reacting. It's about rising. Every time you hold your calm, you reinforce your core. Every time you stay clear, you strengthen your vision. Every time you remain you, no matter what, you redefine your identity. That's transformation. Let's break it down into action. How do you live unmoved in a world that thrives on reaction? First, lower your reactivity threshold. You don't need to respond to everything. Silence is not weakness, it's strategy. Every word you don't say keeps power in your pocket. Second, build a personal code. Know what you stand for. Know what you'll walk away from. Write it down. Repeat it until it becomes instinct. When your values are clear, decisions become simple. Third, control your environment. Your peace is sacred. Protect it from noise, gossip, and digital chaos. Unfollow people who drain you. Limit conversations that lead nowhere. Create space for clarity. Fourth, practice composure daily. Train stillness like a muscle.
Start small. Pause before you react. Breathe before you reply. Think before you speak. Over time, you'll find that peace isn't something you chase. It's something you carry. That's emotional maturity. That's the unmoved life in motion.
Remember, the world doesn't reward noise, it rewards results. Those who react live at the surface. Those who remain still move at depth. The deeper you go, the harder you are to shake. And that's what this life demands, depth, not drama. You will be tested. People will try to break your calm, question your motives, or trigger your old habits. That's fine. Let them. Their chaos is not your concern. Your job is to stay composed. You have a choice every single time, to get pulled into the storm or to become the calm inside it. That's the real discipline. That's the real transformation. Because emotional control is not just a skill, it's an identity. You either live moved by everything, or you live unmoved, guided by purpose. Remain calm, remain clear, remain you. Think about it. How many people lose themselves because they overreacted once, said something they didn't mean, made a move they couldn't take back? Emotional impulse destroys more potential than failure ever could. That's why living unmoved is freedom. When you don't flinch, you don't fall. When you don't overthink, you don't drown. When you don't chase, you don't crumble. You move differently. You think slower, but act stronger. You feel deeper, but reveal less. You see clearer because your vision isn't blurred by emotion. That's the evolution you've been chasing, not more strength, but more stability. Because stability is strength. Calm is confidence. Composure is power. You don't have to prove your strength anymore. You embody it. The unmoved life is not a finish line. It's a practice, a daily discipline. Every morning you recommit to calm. Every moment you re-choose clarity. Every conflict you reassert control. Because peace isn't something you find, it's something you become. And when you become peace, the world loses its grip on you. When you become discipline, distraction fades. When you become clarity, chaos looks small. That's the power of the unmoved life. That's what redefines you. So hold that line. Stay centered when others scatter. Stay grounded when others chase noise. Stay unmoved when others lose themselves. You've built discipline. You've built control. You've built peace. Now live it. Remain calm. Remain clear. Remain you. Because this stillness, this composure, this discipline isn't the end of your journey. It's the rebirth of who you've always been. You've built control. You've built stillness. You've built strength. But the journey doesn't stop here. Because emotional mastery isn't about surviving. It's about creating. You've learned to stand still. Now it's time to learn to move forward with power, precision, and purpose. The discipline to stay unmoved is not built in comfort. It's built in conflict. When life shouts, you whisper. When others panic, you breathe. When the world reacts, you remain. Every pause you take is power earned. Every reaction you deny is strength multiplied. The calm mind sees clearly. The steady heart endures longer. The quiet soul outlasts them all. So from this moment forward, stop chasing noise, stop proving worth, stop reacting to chaos. Become the observer, the strategist, the unmoved one. Because those who stay unmoved move the world. Now stand still and master yourself.